You know, for decades, if you talked about UFOs, you were pretty much pushed to the fringes. But in just the last few years, something has totally shifted. The whole conversation has gone mainstream. We've got credible witnesses, official government programs, all trying to get a handle on a very real mystery. So let's dive into what's actually going on, because the potential answers, well, they're way, way stranger than you might think. And really, this quote gets right to the heart of it. That's from Chad Underwood, the Navy pilot who filmed that now famous Tic Tac video. I mean, these are people whose entire job, whose life, depends on knowing what can and can't fly. And they are seeing objects that just don't care about our laws of physics. No wings, no visible propulsion, no heat signature, but they can perform maneuvers that are simply impossible by our current standards. You see, for the longest time, there was this huge stigma around UAPs. That's unidentified anomalous phenomena. Pilots were afraid they'd get laughed at or lose their careers if they reported something strange. Officials just kind of swept it all under the rug. Well, that's all changing. That era is pretty much over. The evidence has gotten so overwhelming and so credible that authorities have no choice but to take it seriously, not as a joke, but as a real national security issue that has to be investigated. And just look at how fast all of this happened. Things really kicked off in 2017 when the New York Times just dropped this bombshell story with official military footage. By 2020, the Pentagon finally comes out and says, yup, it's real. Then boom, a UAP task force is formed. That quickly gets upgraded to a permanent office called RO, and then just last year you have the Senate Majority Leader pushing a major UAP Disclosure Act. This is not a slow leak anymore, it's a fire hose. So what exactly are these official groups looking at? Well, according to the Pentagon's own office, AARO, they are actively tracking around 800 UAP cases. And let's be clear, we're not talking about some blurry photos from someone's backyard. These are 800 separate encounters, most reported by highly trained military pilots and personnel, and each one has to be officially reviewed. Okay, so let's be real here. AARO is very clear that the vast majority of these cases, maybe up to 98%, probably have a normal explanation. Balloons, drones, you name it. But that leaves this small but incredibly important slice of the pie. 2 to 5% are considered possibly really anomalous. Now that might not sound like a lot, right? But when you do the math, that's somewhere between 15 and 40 cases that even the Pentagon can't explain away. And this isn't some low-level assessment. This goes straight to the very top. When you have the highest-ranking military officer in the entire United States, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, going on record and saying some of the stuff is weird and unexplainable, you know you're dealing with a mystery that's being taken very, very seriously. So the go-to explanation for that weird little slice of the pie is usually the extraterrestrial hypothesis, right? Physical ships from other planets with crazy advanced tech. But what if that's still thinking too small? What if the phenomenon is pointing to something much, much stranger about the nature of reality itself? So people who've been digging into this stuff for ages, they have a term for this. They call it high strangeness. This is for the encounters that aren't just about advanced tech, but include elements that feel, well, almost paranormal. This is where things stop feeling like a simple nuts and bolts craft and start bleeding into something else entirely. And get this, check out who's actually floating these ideas. That's a quote from Dr. Gary Nolan. He's a celebrated immunologist at Stanford who has analyzed materials supposedly from UAPs for the government. This isn't some random person. This is a world-class scientist looking at the actual data and saying, hey, maybe this isn't physical at all. Maybe we're dealing with some kind of non-material consciousness. And believe it or not, this isn't just some wild fringe theory. Between 2008 and 2010, the Pentagon itself actually dropped $22 million on a program called AWASAP, and its job to specifically investigate the link between UAPs and the paranormal. A lot of that research was focused on Skinwalker Ranch, a place that's infamous for this kind of high strangeness. Flying orbs, weird creatures, poltergeist stuff, even strange orange portals just appearing out of nowhere. Yeah, the US government was studying this. Okay, so all of this basically boils down to 3 main theories, right? Number 1, it's just our own secret tech. Number 2, the classic extraterrestrial hypothesis, aliens from other planets. But the sheer weirdness of the data is forcing a third, much wilder idea into the conversation, the ultraterrestrial hypothesis. This is the idea that we might be dealing with intelligence that isn't from another star system, but from another dimension, another reality that's right here, coexisting with us. So to even try to get our heads around that last one, the ultra-terrestrial idea, we have to look somewhere totally out of left field. Let's forget about rocket science for a second. What if a super ancient human practice, something most people write off as pure superstition, actually gives us a framework to understand these impossible events. Okay, let's talk about magic. And I know what you're thinking. Wizards and spells? No, 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 not that kind of magic. Think of it like an anthropologist would, as a system, a kind of technology, really, that cultures all around the world developed to try and interact with the parts of reality they didn't understand. A system with its own rules and its own principles for how to make things happen.
And here is where it gets really mind-blowing. Look at this. On the left, you've got anthropology's concept of mana. It's this non-physical force that traditional cultures believe is the basis of magic, something that can affect things at a distance. And on the right, you've got modern parapsychology's term psi. It's their word for non-physical stuff like ESP or moving things with your mind that seem to break the laws of physics. It's like they're two different fields from totally different worlds using different words to describe the exact same concept.
And it doesn't even stop there. The toolkit, the way they actually do it, is almost identical. Parapsychology labs find that things like altered states of consciousness, meditation, and hypnosis improve psi performance. Well, that's just a trans state in magic. Both systems depend on visualizing what you want to happen, and both absolutely require belief and positive expectation to work. It's the same playbook. Okay, here's a really key insight. People who practice magic don't try to do something that's a sure thing, like making the sun rise tomorrow. They use it to try and, nudge things that are up in the air. Things that involve chance, randomness, and uncertainty. They're trying to tip the scales of probability in their favor. And what's absolutely wild is that this lines up perfectly with what modern lab research on psychokinesis, or PK, has found. The experiments consistently show that systems with more randomness built into them are the easiest ones for human consciousness to influence. The very place that magic claims to work is the exact same place where psi has been proven to be most effective. So, all of this leaves us with one final, absolutely reality-bending question. Is it possible that the Tic-Tac UAP is just a high-tech version of the same underlying force of reality that shamans called mana and lab researchers call psi? Are fighter pilots in their billion-dollar jets and ancient shamans in a trance actually tapping into the exact same weird and unexplainable part of our world, just using different interfaces? That's the door the ultraterrestrial hypothesis blows wide open.